Good afternoon, everyone. I'm seeing my fellow committee members making their way in, so we'll go ahead and get started with the County and Municipal Government Committee meeting. Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Senator Albritton. Senator Carnley. Here. Senator Chambliss. Here. Senator Coleman. Here. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Here. Senator Kelley. Here. Senator Coleman Madison. Senator Hovey. Here. Senator Elliott.
Here, and we have a quorum.
Okay.
First bill on the calendar is by the illustrious chairman of the County and Municipal Government Committee in the House, who is making his way forward. It is House Bill 268 by Representative Reed Ingram. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. Sorry I'm out of breath. I ran upstairs. We had a chairman's meeting and running a little late. This bill is a simple bill. It's been vetted by the County Commission. No problems with the lead of municipality. It's been vetted by the board of 911 board, and it just gets accountability to a little oversight.
The questions on the bill? I have a motion by Senator Chambliss and a second by Senator Hovey. Let's call the long roll, please.
Senator Albritton. Senator Carnley. Aye. Senator Chambliss. Aye. Senator Coleman. Aye. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Aye. Senator Kelley. Senator Coleman Madison.
Abstain.
Okay. Senator Hovey.
Aye.
Senator Elliott.
Aye. And so we'll reflect that as an aye from Senator Coleman Madison. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, body. Have a good day.
I like it when things move smoothly. Senator Chambliss, you have Senate Bill 279, sir.
Well, it'll gonna grind to a halt here. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. This bill is fairly straightforward, maybe a little bit too straightforward, but there are certain services that our public entities are doing that are being required to have a general contractor that really shouldn't, like painting, cleaning, waste disposal, stripping and waxing, pressure washing, maintenance, lighting, those type things. However, I'm working with some folks on like painting services. You know, in my mind, I'm talking about painting that wall, but there are like painting the exterior of the building that requires scaffolding and elaborate. So we got to distinguish between some of those a little bit. Same with like maintenance of HVAC units. You know, you replace a solenoid, that's maintenance, but replacing the whole unit's not. So I got a little bit of work that we're doing on that. Probably what we'll do is define it a little bit and then have rules promulgated to really explain what the differences are. But with that, I'll answer any questions or make a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And it's not a question, just a suggestion. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the intent is as far as movement for the rest of the session, but just making sure that this list is the exhausted list, so we don't have to come back another time to end up amending this again. So that's just a suggestion. It's
Sure.
We have a little bit of time to make sure that it's.
Sure.
We have a full list.
Well said. There's always things that I don't think about. So.
Okay, so I have a motion by Senator Hatcher, a second by Senator Chambliss. Any opposition to using the previous roll? Bill receives favorable report. Thank you, Senator Chambliss. That wasn't so bad.
Chairman, committee.
Okay, now for the fun one. Only Senator Albritton would do this to me. So Senator Albritton is not here. And he has a bill for which there is a substitute. So I'm going to sub Senator Albritton's bill, but with his express knowledge and consent, just so we're clear on that. And there is a, in your packet, there is a piece of literature in there with a little bit of a explanation. And then I'm going to see if I can summarize the sub here. It basically, Senator Chambliss removes the engineers and land surveyors from the list of what's covered. There's a 95 AG opinion that covers that. And then, Senator Coleman, to your point, it adds additional construction-related activities that weren't in there to begin with, so we're a little bit more inclusive on that list to handle electrical contractors and refrigeration contractors, gas fitters, plumbers, residential home builders. And then it adds some language from our friends, at the ACCA related to county projects that basically says municipalities may not require business license for a contractor working on a county project on county property. And so we're trying to do all we can to reduce costs, and that's additional taxation as we see that. So you see the handout, that covers the sub, and then the handout itself is really trying to avoid double taxation. And guys, y'all know I'm a general contractor by trade, and I've run into this plenty of times where you do work outside of just one municipality, right? You may do work in Prattville and also in Mobile and also in Fairhope. And so what this is seeking to do is make sure that your gross receipts on which your business license is calculated is based on the gross receipts in that municipality where you're doing work. So I'm not being taxed in Fairhope if my office is in Fairhope for work that I did in Prattville and was absolutely taxed in Prattville on. And so that is the nature of the piece of legislation. We do have a public hearing, and so we're going to start that. Then we'll come back to the substitute and then back to the bill, just if everybody understands the run of show there and everybody's okay with that. Very good. Okay, so the first proponent is going to be Trace Czar with the Associated General Contractors, and then Baker, we'll have you up after that. About 2.5 minutes, Trace, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Senator, members of the committee. My name's Trace Czar. I represent Alabama AGC, but I'm also speaking for the various associations that are listed in the document in front of you. Each of these industry groups has worked with us on this piece of legislation. Essentially, Senate Bill 304 creates a framework by which construction professionals will pay business licenses in municipalities. First, it states that the project city, which is cities where a contractor has a job but is not headquartered, may charge a contractor a business license based on a flat fee or based on the gross receipts for the amount of the project in that city. Second, it states that home cities, the cities where the contractor is headquartered, shall permit the contractor to deduct from its gross receipts the amount it is paid in the project cities, going back to the double taxation reference. This bill is needed just simply due to a patchwork of fee structure across the state with various municipalities. It's not a new concept, I will say that. In fact, on the league's own website, they've got an FAQ document that makes clear a city should not charge a business license based upon the company's entire gross receipts if the company is not headquartered there. This is exactly what we are seeking to codify. And let me be clear, the construction community and those listed in this bill are not seeking to avoid paying business license fees. What we are only asking is to pay what is fair in each municipality that we have a project. Thank you for your time and opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Trace. Are there any questions? Okay. Baker, you're up. You may need to update your website.
I understand it, and I can explain a little bit of that as well. But good afternoon. I'm Baker Allen. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Alabama League of Municipalities. The League is opposed to Senate Bill 304. This bill would allow general contractors, not having seen the substitute, I've got some of the old language, but it would allow general contractors, subcontractors, engineers, and land surveyors to be excluded gross receipts from the business license where they maintain a physical place of business from the gross receipts calculation paid to business licenses in other municipalities. I think the best way to kind of understand this is to give an example. So if I have I'm a general contractor in Montgomery, I do $1 million a year in revenue, 900,000 of that is in the city of Montgomery and 100,000 in Prattville. Currently, some municipalities collect all 1 million in Montgomery in this instance, all 1 million be calculated gross receipts because that's the headquarters. This bill would say that 100,000 I made in Prattville, I could deduct that from that 1 million and only pay the license on the 900,000. Several of our members have reached out with concerns about the financial impacts of Senate Bill 304. You'll notice there's no fiscal note, but those revenues are important for our investments, not only in infrastructure, but tied to debt. So there is a worry about what impact that would have financially by changing those rules. While the bill is limited to only 3 occupations, there could be significant revenue declines as more occupations want to be included as a part of this bill. The League would support additional time to determine the financial impacts of Senate Bill 304. If I still have some time, I can explain the commentary provided earlier about the League's own website.
Sure.
So the example given was when I talked about Montgomery and Prattville. That advice was Prattville, who does not have the headquarters of the business I was referencing, charging the tax on the entire $1 million done in Montgomery. So it's kind of the inverse problem of what this bill seeks to address. I don't know if that adds any clarity. So where there was only 100,000 in Prattville, Prattville might have gone after that $1 million, and that's what the League advice was specific to. That concludes my remarks.
Okay, thanks. Any questions? Okay. Skip Poe, welcome, sir.
Thank you. I'm Skip Poe. I'm the Executive Director of the Alabama Road Builders Association, and I'm here to show support on behalf of our industry for Senate Bill 304. As you heard Trace already explain, at times, not consistently statewide, we've seen contractors double taxed, paying that license fee twice, just as Baker and Trace both explained. You're paying it in your hometown, and then you're potentially paying in the project city. And all we're asking for is a fair and equitable tax that's consistent, that we're roughly, and it's codified, that now that if you pay a license fee in the project city, then that's allowed to be deducted from your hometown. We think that's business friendly, and they also are looking at a case that's going to help reduce project costs, which, as we know, construction costs are one of the few things that never go down. There's enough inflation, and we've got to do everything we can to maintain those costs for our infrastructure. That's all I've got. Thank you for your support.
Skip, while you're here, think about the impact to your membership and to road builders who do projects all over the state, and their gross receipts are huge usually. Their costs are too, but this is a gross receipt tax. And then think about what little town they may be, or city, that one municipality. Our friend Baker Allen gave an example of doing $900,000 of work in one city and then a little bitty 100,000 over here. Your contractors are probably doing the majority of their work, the vast majority, if not all of their work, outside of one particular municipality, yet are being taxed on all of it in one city. Do you have any examples? I mean, when we start talking about numbers remitted.
We won't name names, but there are cases where you're in your hometown, you worked in Project City A, and the value of the contract's $10 million, and they're paying $10,000 business license fee. And then they can't deduct that from their hometown, and then they go over here and do a small little bridge project somewhere else, and then City B turns around and charges them $150 or $200. There's just a gross imbalance. And what the city has, we understand. I mean, that's their business license fee. Our members should know that and be willing to pay that when they go. You can make an argument that if you're doing a public work project, should you pay a business license? Because all you're doing is you're transferring money. Is the owners turn around and putting that money's in the contract, and the owner's basically paying for the money to come back to them. That's a whole nother point. We're not asking for that. We're just asking the case that roughly whatever the fee is, our members going to know it, pay it once, not twice.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Give me 1 second. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, sir. You all do work all over the state, and highways is infrastructure that continues. It connects. How do you separate or appropriate the incremental costs, or for instance, you're going through several municipalities, but it's all the same project. How do you do that with, I'm just wondering.
An ideal case would be like Birmingham. You're resurfacing US 31, and you're going to hit Vestavia. We'd probably hit Hoover, Vestavia, Homewood, and then get into Birmingham. That's just an overhead cost. So whatever each one is, our contractors are roughly factoring that in. And so if one of them's charging $200 and one of them's charging $5,000, they're going to total that all up and put it in their overhead. And then roughly, if it's an ALDOT project, that roughly ALDOT's roughly paying that money to pass back through to the city through the overhead costs.
I have a motion on the sub from Senator Chambliss. I'm going to second that sub, and can we use previous roll? Any objection using previous roll? Okay, the sub's adopted. Now the bill, Senator Coleman. Did you have a question?
I did. I just wanted just a brief description of the difference between the original bill we had and the sub.
Yes, ma'am. So that's what I started out with. It excludes the engineers and land surveyors. They're covered by that AG opinion.
Is there an amendment to it, or that's just the?
That's
am I
the
seeing over
sub
here?
that we adopted,
Okay,
and
all
this is the explanation
So
of the
just
sub.
just the exclusion, and that's it?
Then it adds construction related to other individuals like electrical contractors. Or you remember that list I went through at the beginning? So that it does that.
Well, I still just wanted to make sure because we just seeing the sub.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
There's that for paper if you like it.
Thank you.
Okay. We've got the sub adopted. Are there any other questions on the legislation itself? And again, this is Senator Albritton's bill, so I'm trying not to mess it up for him. Okay. Any objection to using the previous roll? You want to do that? I've got a motion by Senator Coleman Madison, the second by Senator Chambliss. Is there any objection to using the previous roll? Okay. Bill receives a favorable report. Thanks, Linda. Okay. Next, we have Senate Bill 303, Senator Kelley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 303 authorizes off-road vehicles to operate on specific public roads in the same manner as private passenger vehicles, but only if they meet strict safety and registration and insurance requirements. This has been a bill that myself and several others have been working on for the fourth year now, and it's taken on many, many forms, and so we have worked with the Commission Association and had the language in there that they requested to be in there, as well as the engineers and then the Sheriff's Association. I think we worked with every organization and probably most of your grandparents as well to try to get us to the point where we've got something that's agreeable to everyone. And we've pretty well got this. There may be a slight amendment by the time we hit the floor. But the safety certification by a licensed over-the-road vehicle dealer, conforming that the vehicle has brakes, lights, horns, seat belts, roll bar, spark arrestor, muffler, windshield, and compliant tires. Registration and tag issued through the local licensing official after certification. They must have liability insurance just like any other vehicle. And, you've noticed that there's been some wrecks before. There was no insurance involved. This way, there will be insurance involved since they're on the road anyway. Driver requirements, they must be a licensed driver. The road restrictions, only public roads and unincorporated areas with a maximum speed limit of 45 miles an hour. It's not allowed on any interstates or inside any municipalities. The exemptions, I worked with the Federation and others on this, agriculture use, private property with permission, wildlife management, law enforcement, and other official functions. It's got liability protections for county engineers, county commissions, and employees. Traffic violations are treated as traffic violations. And that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
Are there questions for the sponsor? Senator Hovey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Kelley. I know I grabbed you right before we came in here after hearing from a couple of probate judges in my neck of the woods, and understanding and respecting the amount of coordination that's gone into this bill over the last few years. I appreciate your willingness to at least hear out some concerns and thoughts from the probate judges regarding some of the licensing and that sort of thing. So, and liability, et cetera. But I just wanted to point out, I appreciate your willingness, and I may bend your ear a little bit afterwards before we hit the floor.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Carnley?
So is like in the exemption, the agriculture part of it is important to me because we use one, especially this time of the year, trying to get cattle out of, winter grazing pastures. If I'm going down, a county road, an unpaved road, or even, a paved road, and I get pulled over, what do I have to do or have to provide to say, hey, well, I'm exempt from this law?
For what that you've got right now, it doesn't touch that provision for agriculture purposes. That stays in place just as is now. You would continue to do just as you are now. This would not touch that at all.
So, I mean, if a sheriff sees me and he says, hey, you're on the road, You know, and by law, you've got to have license. I'm asking, is there any other kind of equipment that has to be on a farm that?
No.
So I could just say I'm farm and you're
Your
supposed to leave me
agriculture
alone.
use, and you showed that you're using it for agriculture use, and you're the same.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you. I'm going to support you today.
Thank you.
Haven't in the past, but because of what you have done as it relates to the limitations, especially in unincorporated areas. But there is a provision that I want somebody to get me some additional information on the full impact, and it's on page 5 with letter J, line 129, the mere use of an off-road vehicle pursuit to this section shall not be evidence of product misuse, contributory negligence, or assumption of the risk. So just before we take the vote on the floor, I just want to make sure from the lawyers the impact of that particular provision.
I'll be glad to get that for you.
Senator Carnley.
So one question I have is on the fee to the dealers. And I've been talking to some. Are you planning on putting that cap on there through an amendment?
That's one that we're going to discuss before it hits the floor.
Okay, because I've had a couple reach out to me that say that they want to try to get that on there just to keep it from getting too exorbitant, so it doesn't get crazy.
I think that's a tricky slope because I've discussed that with several, and then I get faced with, well, you're trying to dictate what a business can charge for their services. So I think there's a slippery slope right there. We've just got to be very careful about how an amendment may be worded.
Other questions for the sponsor? Okay, Senator Kelley moves favorable report. I'll second it. Is there any opposition to using the previous roll? Seeing none, your bill receives a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good committee work, guys. We got one more, Senator Barfoot. If you can kind of come up with Senate Bill 298. And I could not help but see that when you vacated your seat that we have our esteemed Chief Counsel to the Attorney General here. Catherine, welcome. We're always glad to see you here and not in Senator Barfoot's committee at 8:30 in the morning. So welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, I'll echo that with regards to Ms. Robertson. She is a staunch supporter of victims' rights and law and order in the state, and appreciate her presence here and welcome her anytime to Senate Judiciary, and the time may come along fairly soon when she's in there with us as well. This bill is a relatively simple bill, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you've read. It affects Class 3 municipalities only. It is a minimum staffing bill. Calls for, as written, 2 officers per 1,000 residents, and that's based on, those 2 officers are based on the 2020 census, so that is a static number, not a moving number. I've heard some discussion about how that may affect other municipalities or Huntsville and Montgomery together. Again, those are numbers that are static in nature. And if you are continuously gaining, or shall I say not losing law enforcement, this bill would not affect you. It would not affect either one of those municipalities. If on the effective date of this bill, if it goes into law, there would be a report that would be due to ALEA showing how many law enforcement sworn officers are in that municipality. And then there's a compliance period of up to 5 years in which, as long as that municipality and their police department shows improvement, continued efforts to staff that police department to get to adequate levels. And I would say that these are minimal levels, obviously, but as long as that effort continues, then the municipality would be in compliance. If a municipality is not in compliance, then allows ALEA, the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, to come in and assume some oversight of the municipal enforcement agency. And then lastly, whatever cost that the state may incur, because I've heard some questions about this, whatever cost that the state may incur if the state, in fact, ALEA, does come in and have some role in that enforcement, retention, and recruiting efforts for that municipality would be responsible for providing for and paying that back to the state of Alabama. And I'll be glad to answer any questions either now or at some point in time. I know there's a public hearing that's been called.
Senator Coleman Madison.
Thank you, sir. Senator Barfoot, just one quick question. Is this a current problem in Class 3 municipalities?
Well, Class 3 municipalities, there are two. I don't represent one of those. I don't represent Huntsville. I don't know whether or not it is a problem in Montgomery. What I do know is that when I talk to officers in Montgomery, that they believe that they are understaffed. And I'll applaud the city of Montgomery. Here recently, there was a campaign commercial during the Super Bowl where the city acknowledged and is trying to recruit more officers, and I think that's an important thing. This bill actually comes along the city of Montgomery, alongside the city of Montgomery in their efforts to continue to recruit and retain law enforcement officers. And so I think it's a benefit, especially to Montgomery.
Well, and I'm from Birmingham, and this is not just a Class 3. It's an issue all over. Look at our Aaliyah. I mean, look at corrections. It's just an issue all over, and I was just wondering if it's such a problem that is really, of course, crime is out there as well, but crime is everywhere. So what I was hoping not to do, I'll listen to the public hearing, did not want to further tie the hands of law enforcement officers either.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. As many of y'all know, and I've said this in other hearings, I come from a family of law enforcement officers. Daddy was a policeman in Montgomery, and another uncle that was a policeman in Montgomery years ago, and then two that were state troopers. I, too, do not want to tie the hands of law enforcement, and I think this bill does quite the opposite. It puts more law enforcement, the ability for the state to come in and help and assist those municipalities, puts more law enforcement officers on the street. That's the goal of it. And when you have more law enforcement officers, you have more interactions with bad people that intend to do harm to you, to all the committee members here, to all of these people sitting out here, and to say nothing of the people that I represent in the city of Montgomery and surrounding communities that are affected by the crime in Montgomery.
Thank you, Senator Barfoot. Oh, sorry, Senator Hatcher.
Senator Barfoot, my friend, you have just taken Fat Tuesday and put it on a diet for me. It's supposed to be happy. I guess my concern is this feels like a punishment for not having enough officers. And the idea would be that somehow or the other, if you have this plethora of officers, is going to somehow diminish crime. That piece we know is not true, right?
I would say quite the opposite. Certainly, you don't stop necessarily crime by having more officers, but you certainly can curtail it. And one thing that I would say is absolutely the case is that if you do not have the resources available, and we're talking about human resources in this context, if you don't have those human resources available, police department employees, whatever municipality you may be talking about, believe me, there is more crime that happens that goes unsolved or else is not addressed, and you cannot stop it ahead of time.
Well, and I'm going to stop for the hearing, but I do. My concern is that, as far as I recall, Aaliyah is not even fully staffed, and so we're gonna suddenly take the law enforcement officers for the state and put them in municipalities. Seems to be not really great thinking. And to piggyback a little bit off of Senator Coleman Madison, if this is so good for Class 2, Class 3 municipalities, then why not spread the love around to all of the municipalities?
So let me say this, if anybody wants to have their own bill about Class 1 or Class 2 municipalities or anything else, I'd be supportive of that concept. But this bill deals with specifically Class 3, and I would argue against any type of frustration against that as dealing with Class 3 municipalities, specifically Montgomery that both you and I represent.
That's right.
And I would say it's not a punishment, quite the contrary, quite the contrary.
But it feels targeted.
Yeah, well, it is targeted for the people that we represent and for the people who come to the city of Montgomery, again, not to punish Montgomery, but to come alongside and aid Montgomery. As I mentioned earlier, there has been an acknowledgement by the city, and I'm grateful for that there is a need for further recruitment and retention of those in law enforcement in the city of Montgomery. And I think that this is an effort to aid Montgomery in that respect.
But I've had no residents in the city of Montgomery to come to me seeking some relief with a bill like this. Not a single person. And so this is a concern for me, obviously, as a member of this community, a voter in this community. that we are putting this kind of restriction on our people, because it can only be viewed this way as a weaponization to some extent of the legislative body. Are we going to now repair potholes? The state's going to do that for us in the municipalities? Because I do think that certain things should be reserved for municipalities and certain things are reserved for the state. I've never heard of this, and I'm new to this role. But anyone who's been around for a while, please tell me. But I'll pause for the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
So if I could just respond really
Sure,
quickly. And Senator Hatcher and I get along great. I mean, there's no question about that. He is my friend, and we have the same goal in mind, and that is to make the people that we represent safer, happier, better educated, to make sure that their lives are more fulfilled than when we came in here. So we have the same goal. I would just say that you're correct, Senator Hatcher, that filling potholes is not the same as protecting lives or protecting property. And I do think that there are certain roles that the state of Alabama, as a reminder, the 400 and some odd municipalities that are created by the legislature, we have control over those municipalities. And but for us, they would not exist. So there is a difference. The second thing is in regards to your about potholes, I think we as legislators have the responsibility to make sure, to the best of our ability, through legislation, that we give people the best chance of their God-given right to live and maintain and live in a free society, free of being attacked on the streets at night, no matter where you're at, from Mobile County to Huntsville and any points in between. Just so happens that I represent Montgomery.
Okay. Members, can we start public hearing real quick? Okay. Let's have Chief Grayboys come up first, the Montgomery Police Chief. And Mayor Reed, you were signed up first, but I was asked to let him speak first. I just didn't want my members to think I was in any way disrespecting you, sir. So I was told to do it in this order. So Chief, welcome to the committee, sir.
Thank you. Didn't exactly know, of course, a few weeks ago, or even 18 months ago when I started back in this job, that I'd be actually put in a position to address this body, and I appreciate it. And thank you for hearing me today. And I listened to Senator Barfoot's presentation. And from my point of view, it does not help us. In fact, actually, for the following reasons, it feels very much like we're singled out. And if I'm feeling that way, and I come from officers, I rose up the ranks. And it feels like Class 3 agencies only are being singled out. And when we get singled out in this type of manner and across the state, it casts undeserved negative aspersions on the agencies that are affected. There's only 2 affected. And if a methodology can be used to do that with these agencies, then what's to stop this same methodology being used against any other municipality in the state? Our agency has been making every effort to combat what has been a state and national issue affecting law enforcement agencies in recruiting and retention arising from nationwide trends and conditions arising between 2020 and 2024. Currently, our recruiting and retention are on the upswing. Literally, I have 23 people waiting to go into our academy. I've got 8 lateral post-certified individuals waiting to start and 23 in the hiring process. Our numbers are rising, and they're going to be in a good place. In the last 2 years, Mayor Reed's administration has increased our pay well over 15%. And this year, we're instituting recruitment and retention incentives that have led to incredible effect, increasing our applications and interest in working in the city of Montgomery. The bill makes no acknowledgement of performance by our agency in crime reduction and in carrying out its duties. Regardless of whatever manpower situations we're dealing with, our officers, the men and women of our agency, have been working very, very hard and very, very effectively in doing things to reduce crime, especially serious crime. In 2025 alone, we reduced robberies by over 40%. Currently, year to date, we've reduced robberies in our city by 50%. Overall, violent crime last year dropped 25% in the city, and this year, year to date, we've been dropping at 18%. And that's just at the start of this year in this quarter. Right now, even this year alone, I can tell you, we've arrested and increased our arrests of individuals that needed to be arrested by at least 40%. And this has been in targeted efforts to definitely combat crime. Currently, we have a good relationship with ALEA. I really respect ALEA and appreciate them because they come into the city and help us. Anytime we ask for assistance, they give it to us. We work very closely with them. I have people on the MAX team. I have people on task force with the federal government who also comes in and helps. I was just meeting with the FBI earlier today because we were dealing with, of course, that unfortunate shooting that had happened last week. Fortunately, the officer involved in that case is doing very well. Our partnerships with our law enforcement agencies are very strong, and they do support us. And it's going to continue. But this SB, it harms our morale. It creates controversy around the agencies that are affected. And that controversy actually creates a new challenge for us. It can negatively affect public confidence in the agency that's affected, and that when you do that, you're negatively affecting recruiting and retention efforts. I don't see where this bill is going to assist us in moving forward with our recruiting efforts. And I do think it's going to affect the morale of my officers when they see us being singled out in any type of negative manner like that, especially when they're doing the work that they're doing. So basically, I see some difficulties here. One other issue that I would see some difficulties with as well deals with the liabilities. I stated earlier, I do believe that with the way our rate of recruiting and retention is going, that we would probably end up being in compliance with this within that window. But that does not change the fact that we'd still have to deal with that controversy that's arisen by even being put in the window in the first place. When you get put in that, what liabilities arise if there is an actual takeover? Does that mean that suddenly, all of a sudden, all of our officers are now state agents or state officers? Does the state assume liability for the actions of our officers if something like that takes place? I don't know. I am not a lawyer, but those are the types of issues that are going to have to also be answered when you affect something like this, especially issues related to chain of command that would be operational. I know my time is probably limited, so I'll give it up.
Thank you, Chief. We did go way over there, but I wanted, out of respect for you, I wanted to make sure you had an opportunity, certainly, to have your voice heard. And this committee has a tremendous amount of respect for our law enforcement men and women. We appreciate what you do every day. Mayor Reed, welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I'll try to be very brief. One, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, your committee for the work you do each and every day for our state. But I do come before you to oppose this bill. I don't think it's a good bill. I don't think it's a needed bill at all. I think this is a solution in search of a problem. I don't see adding state government oversight in this regard being helpful. And as Chief Grayboy just pointed out, we do feel singled out. Proud to work with our senators, Barfoot and Hatcher here, but I didn't know anything about this bill until Friday. Had not had any conversations with Senator Barfoot. Senator Barfoot knows my number, I know his. Certainly would have welcomed any conversation on this to talk this through. But it seems like this is a bill that really puts the state in a bad predicament. I would really say puts the city in a bad predicament. I think Huntsville probably would feel the same. Mayors are on the ground every day. We're closest to the issues that impact our residents when it comes to public safety, public works, whatever it may be. We know our number one job is to keep our community safe. And so that's why we've been investing in our police department since day one. This didn't just start with a campaign commercial or Super Bowl commercial. We've been investing both time, equipment, training, research, everything that we can, really since we came out of COVID when we saw a large amount of officers retire. But I think for us, part of this is the core argument of where's the role of local government and what's the role of state government. And I think for us, allowing the state to override local officials is a bridge too far. I know I've heard from many legislators over the years of the overreach of Washington, D.C. into Alabama. Well, we don't need that repeated from the State House in our city halls. We believe that home rule should be exactly what it is, and that's home rule. When we look at the issues that we're dealing with, we have to look at things from a practical standpoint. Operationally, to have the state be able to appoint an interim leader does not help us in any regard. You can't build that community confidence and trust in that manner. We've been working very well with Aaliyah. We work very well with our federal partners, and we have since we've come in. We're all trying to accomplish the same goal. We know Aaliyah is down in some quarters, some may say 30%. If you're on the roads, if you're in rural Alabama, if you're on the state, you may not see a state trooper between here and the state line. So we know that they're stretched in. We're not asking them to come in and assist us in any ways that we don't need that to be allowed for by our directive coming from our police chief. But I also do want to highlight, the accountability that is concerning here. And Chief kind of mentioned that a little bit. I think making sure that people understand who their police chief answers to is important. And that's nothing against Secretary Taylor or the Attorney General. It is to say that the police chief should remain local. And I do raise those issues of concern because of what precedents this may set. And I think when you look at Class 3 municipalities, which right now are just Huntsville and Mobile, it sets a dangerous precedent that this can go on in other cities. And I know all of us as mayors are trying to hire the best and brightest we can to protect and serve our community. But I think we can have a better role in doing that without creating a law that brings in unneeded oversight and what I would call unneeded overreach into our cities, and certainly how we govern and how we police those. Are we going to continue to work each and every day to try to hire the best and brightest and recruit and retain them? Absolutely. Do we need the state's help in that? No, we don't. We don't need any help or any meddling by the state in our city halls. Quite honestly, I think our city halls run a lot better sometimes than the state does. So we can handle our own issue. We can work together with our law enforcement agencies as we've done, as Governor Ivey has highlighted herself. So I think we can do all of those things the way we're doing them and achieve the goals that Chief Grayboy's just laid out. And we want to see those statistics come down even more and go up even more when it comes to those arrests and when it comes to those rates that we see. So we appreciate your work. We appreciate all that you do. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with Senator Hatcher and with Senator Barfoot. But again, just want to close by saying I stand in firm opposition to this bill, and I hope the committee will see it the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Baker, you're signed up to speak next. You are not going to have the same latitude that the chief and the mayor had as far as time goes. So, as I like to say, brevity is the soul of wit. That's a Shakespeare line, by the way.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll keep my remarks brief. Good afternoon. I'm Baker Allen, Director of Governmental Affairs for the Alabama League of Municipalities. The League is opposed to Senate Bill 298. This bill would provide minimum staffing requirements for Class 3 municipality law enforcement agencies. The requirements would include a minimum ratio of 2 full-time law enforcement officers for every 1,000 residents of the municipality. Additionally, the bill would create certain compliance requirements. While this bill only applies to Class 3 municipalities, Huntsville and Montgomery, law enforcement's needs could vary from those communities. The issue with police staffing is not a lack of desire to hire officers at the municipal level. Due to the current legal environment and sentiment towards law enforcement, hiring qualified candidates can be challenging. This bill could force Class 3 cities to prioritize quantity over quality, which could further increase liability for cities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Baker. Senator Barfoot, you're going to be back up here if we can. Actually, Catherine, would you come up if you have a comment or two from the Attorney General's office?
Catherine Robertson from the AG's office. I'll just say this. I sympathize a lot with what both the chief and the mayor said. Actually, don't agree that more police officers doesn't help a whole awful lot with crime. But I'll also say, just from a state standpoint, I can only speak for the current Attorney General's office, but it is not our desire to ever take over anything, and I suspect that Aaliyah would feel the same way. At the same time, we are the repository of a lot of constituent complaints, concerns, and they look to us, because the AG is the chief law enforcement officer, to have some reaction to that. It is certainly up to this body to decide what you want the state's reaction to those kind of concerns to be. I think it's a pretty philosophical argument. I agree with a lot of what was said. I think local control is the ideal. I do agree with that. But the state has to decide whether it turns a blind eye and says, talk to your local people, or if there is some role for the AG or Aaliyah to play. We are mentioned in this bill, so I wanted to be here to hear the discussion. We are happy to play whatever role y'all want to give us. I think it's an important debate. I'm committed to working with Senator Barfoot to sort of sort out the concerns and the pros and cons, but you do need to know that the state does hear a lot when these kind of questions come into play, and they look to the AG's office, I can speak for us, to be the answer to a lot of local problems. Whether you want us to be is up to y'all, but I'll just flag that for you.
Thank you, ma'am. Senator Barfoot, you are back up, sir.
Thank you, members. So, this is not a turf war, regardless of what you may have read between the lines. It's not state versus city. It's not, it doesn't have it. The only turf war that there is good guys versus bad guys. And one way to control that is for the state to be able to be a supplemental factor to help municipalities, in this case Montgomery, in their recruitment areas. I'd ask for your support on this bill. And I would add, to the extent that there are changes that need to be made without frustrating what I'm trying to accomplish, I'm certainly willing to work with and look at and think about those.
Thank you, Senator Barfoot. I know we're going to have some discussion on this, and if members don't mind, I'm going to opine on it just a little bit. I know already you've had other members of this body that have asked to be included in this piece of legislation. They think it's a good idea for their city, too, to have a backstop when there is a problem. And so I will, I've heard concerns about singling out and that it may feel that way. Your intention is certainly to help the municipality that you represent along with Senator Hatcher. But I also know that there are other members who have looked at this and said, hey, this might be good in my city too. And so you're not singling anybody out any more than you're just representing your folks. But there are a lot of people running around that think this is a good idea. I heard some concerns also about, this feeling like a state takeover or something like that, and whether or not we should do that as a state. The school board, the State Board of Education does that all the time where there are problems. And so there's certainly precedent out there for instances like that where there are problems. And I don't want to go a whole lot further with whether or not there is a problem. I think the data speaks for itself, so I'll leave that alone, and I'll open it to questions. Senator Coleman.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chair. First and foremost, I had a couple of little notes, but just the analogy that you just gave with the school boards, that doesn't fit. So when you have a school board and there are issues with governance, there are, issues with all of those things, that's different than a municipality that may not, number one, have the resources, because this is going to be an unfunded mandate. But number two, there is a national issue with the whole perception of police. That is one of the reasons some people are not going into policing. In addition to, when I look at the city of Birmingham, which is the largest of the 21 towns and cities that I represent, our mayor has done an amazing job with resources to be able to recruit. I think right now we're at 100% of the ability to recruit. But with that, they had a $10,000 bonus they were offering for people to sign up. Look, my son was getting ready to graduate from college, and I was like, hey, look at this bonus. He was like, okay, mama, you do want me to live, right? Because there are people out there that have military-style weapons. He used another term, but military-style weapons, and then the police do not have the resources that they need in order to fight that. So if this bill is not getting military-style weapons and those types of weapons off the street, then it's not doing what we need it to do in order to get more off people who want to be officers. And so again, this bill, again, very paternalistic. It is unfortunate when I sit here and I listen to a mayor who says no one even came to the sponsor, didn't come talk to him about it. That's very paternalistic. At least open the door to allow to have those conversations with the chief executive officer of the city, with the chief of police of the city. And then you don't even represent Huntsville. So, I mean, I would just assume, unless you tell me that I'm wrong, that you hadn't talked to the mayor and the chief of police there either to find out what are the strides that are being made in order to get these officers in. So again, we have this national issue of folks not wanting to go into policing, that it is not the fault of these municipalities. And so again, for that reason and several other reasons, one other note I had here, so, I just read over the weekend how one police department completely disbanded because of corruption within the police department. That doesn't help anyone who wants to go into that doesn't give a message that, hey, this is an entity that I want to go into. We need to address those issues. We have the ability to address those issues before a piece of legislation like this that is so paternalistic, that takes over the ability of the autonomy of these municipalities. And again, when you hadn't even had a conversation with the chief executive and the chief of police about the direction that they're going in, that had you had the conversation, you might have known. You might have gotten the information that you needed and might say, I might not even need this piece of legislation. So that is, I just hope today, Mr. Chair, that it is not your will to have a vote on this. Sometimes we have public hearings to get the information out there, and then we come back in another week. I would hope today that we would wait to get the additional information now from the city of Huntsville that will also be impacted by this piece of legislation.
Other comments or questions? Senator Barfoot?
Mr. Chair, if I could just address that. As far as what the city of Montgomery is doing, again, I applaud them. They acknowledge that there is an issue, much like other municipalities around the state and throughout the nation have, and that is that recruitment of law enforcement members are down. They acknowledge that there's a problem there, right? This is a solution.
That's a national problem.
I don't represent anybody outside of District 25 currently.
But
that is a. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead, because I didn't want to interrupt, but I do want to respond, and then I'll be finished.
Yeah, that is an issue that nobody is denying, that the city of Montgomery is in need of police officers. This does not say that their efforts are in vain. It doesn't say this piece of legislation doesn't cast blame on anybody. This bill is acknowledging the need for that, and the state is willing to help. We've passed millions of dollars of state taxpayer money for the Metro Area Crime Suppression Unit that could be used throughout the state. I am thankful that it's used here in the district in Montgomery that I represent. I'm thankful for that. This would add additional oversight and benefit to the law enforcement for the city of Montgomery that patrol and interact with people that I represent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, my response, if you'll allow, and I'll be brief.
I just want to make sure we have other committee members.
I understand that, but I mean, he was addressing me, and so, Mr. Chair, I want to respond to that. So it does nothing for recruitment. This bill does absolutely nothing for recruitment. We have a recruitment problem. The bill doesn't do anything for recruitment. Oversight, but does it put any money in here for bonuses for recruitment? Does it help change the perception that some people have of policing? So it doesn't do anything for recruitment, in my opinion. It just adds a paternalistic layer of oversight that may not even be needed.
Senator Barfoot, hold that real quick, if you would. Senator Coleman Madison.
Well, as much as I love Senator Barfoot, I'm going to have to agree with Senator Coleman, simply because it doesn't increase the number. kind of reminds me of the saying, how cold is your ice, if you get my drift here. As far as supplemental funding is really what we need, but now the mayor and the chief of police has said that we don't have an issue. Our numbers are going down. It would have been better to get with them and find out exactly what they needed specifically. But each one of us, when it comes down to general fund and education budget, has to submit. So I don't know if Senator Barfoot, if that was one of those requests that you made as far as the district that you represent, that supplemental funding for your request would be that the monies would go to the city of Montgomery to augment getting and actually putting people on the ground. That would actually be putting something in your district that would make a difference in what your bill is asking. But right now, it just requires oversight, and I really think this is going to be a boomerang, because the law enforcement people that are out there to serve and protect are not going to feel supported, but they are going to feel singled out, and that what we are doing, in spite of the fact that our numbers are coming down, that we are addressing the crimes and we are arresting people, that this is still not enough. So I don't think this is going to be something that's going to be a positive.
Senator Hatcher.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request the same as Senator Coleman as it relates to a vote. And here's why. And Senator Barfoot, as he said, is my friend, but I have just heard about this bill Saturday. I represent at least 70% of Montgomery. And I am just now hearing about this bill. So I am respectfully requesting that we hold a vote, that we do not hold a vote today.
Senator Barfoot, I think that is a reasonable request, and I will commit to having your bill first on the calendar next week and with a vote. But I think that is a reasonable request to have these conversations. I appreciate obviously what you're trying to do here, and in my zeal to support what I think is a good piece of legislation, I should have let it marinate just a little bit longer before putting it on the agenda. So we're going to give it that opportunity, and we will come back to it first thing next week. We've had the public hearing, we've heard the comments, and we'll let everybody digest, and we'll see you next week, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Absolutely. And so that bill is carried over.